Hello, truth seekers. Happy Mother's Day. Today I'll share a critique and a general opinion of the 2000 Mules documentary released by Dinesh D'Souza. Prior to seeing the documentary, the biggest question I had was, is this going to be presented well enough to actually shift the Overton window? As you would expect, immediately AP Fact Checkers came out to try to debunk 2000 Mules in any way possible. Twitter, with its obvious bias, allowed the hashtag 2000 Mules movie to trend, but placed a subtopic heading that linked to the AP Fact Check article. Twitter really got on the ball and was able to get this counter narrative out on May the 3rd, the night after the premiere of the documentary in various movie theaters. I focus a bit on this AP Fact Check because this is going to be the focus of the narrative control. You get out early and you point the specific shortcomings of the documentary, so that way your already sympathetic, mind-controlled audience takes satisfaction with your debunking and does not look further. The author, Ali Swinson, I'll show you her Twitter. This is her Twitter. Obvious question right out the gate. Is the person biased? Answer. Location, New York City. Reporting on misinformation, +1. Retweet, largely by changing terminology to sound more illegal. Biased person, +2. Praising the appointment of Karine Jean-Pierre, openly LGBTQ black women, +3. Ukraine, topical +4, but factual, potentially, so not at point. Quote tweet, U.S. Supreme Court allows states to further restrict or even ban abortions. Minority women will bear the brunt of it. +4. So probable bias based on topics, location being in extremely liberal New York City, and handle emphasizing reporting of misinformation. She says that she did watch 2000 Mules. I did as well. Now let's look at her claims. So I had perceived some weaknesses in the documentary, and it appears this fact checker perceived some of the same ones. This is a key image shown in a documentary demonstrating an individual's cell tracking route across Atlanta. Her facts. The finding is based on false assumptions about the precision of cell phone tracking data and the reasons that someone might drop off multiple ballots, according to experts. She lists an example of an individual, Larry Campbell, a Michigan voter who dropped off ballots for himself and family members to a local box in 2020, and this is a part of the counter argument. An example of an individual named Street is given. Senator Sheriff Street of Pennsylvania had to drive by one drop box up to 7 or 8 times a day when traveling between his 2 political offices. I did no ballot stuffing, but over the course of time, I literally probably account for hundreds and hundreds of their unique visits, even though I'm a single actor in a single vehicle moving back and forth in my ordinary course of business. So going back to this image, you may start to realize the tactic that's going on here. So pretending this is a different state, you have that one state senator who may have to check on a ballot box several times, traveling a route to do so, and therefore he may get picked up in the information intelligence gathering by the contractors who worked with True the Vote. You have the other example of a man who delivered 6 ballots to 1 box of his family members. If this path is verified, then the probability it's a corrupt action increases. If this pathway could be verified by time of day, that further establishes things. So a poll worker could go to various drop boxes to pick up the ballots in a route that looks somewhat like this. But if this occurs at 2:45 in the morning, in multiple instances that can't all be accounted for by a limited number of poll workers, then that increases the index of suspicion of corruption. The major weakness of the documentary is going beyond the presentation of common sense evidence to the process of slow walking the viewer through the sources and methods of data collection, drawing connection between video and this map data. So we're shown this video example of a mule driving up to a stop, parking incorrectly, walking up to the drop box, and here depositing. The importance is the time of day. It's about 3:45 in the morning. Then we have the fact that more than one ballot is being put into the box. In fact, enough to cause this to occur. You see ballots fall on the ground. So this could be a man who has to work the night shift, who at the end of his shift chose to deposit the ballots for him and his family as it was the most convenient occasion. But that video has to be connected to this map data. True to Vote had to show that a given individual on video corresponds to a given cell phone tracking pattern, like you see here. Additional information, such as the mobile carrier and the time a route such as this was done, in correlation with the video, would also have to have been shown. Information that doxes the individual would go even further to establishing what actually occurred. or at least revealing to the extent if the person was a poll worker or had any specific affiliation to nonprofit groups that helped facilitate the get out the vote efforts. That's the level of detail needed to begin to shift the Overton window in my view. This video of the guy having to take a photo of the bike against the backdrop of the ballot box is significant and suggests a possibility of compensation requiring evidence of action. However, they would have to go further to show the specific organizational tie this person had, and also evidence of different locations where this individual could be seen doing something similar. A few of the videos in this documentary are enough for a person of common sense to know that there's something probably wrong, but much more work needed to be done to make things irrefutable for someone who wasn't already suspicious. You see this collage of photos of video evidence. The average person needs access to each and every single one of these video files. Data showing connections each of these mule individuals had with nonprofit organizations, the number of cell phones, mobile carriers, and organization of the data to show one individual at different video locations should have been advertised in this documentary. Like maybe towards the end, there should have been a reference to go to this location where we have all the raw data. Creating an overview type of documentary will excite the base, but I fear it's not enough to overcome the actual establishment. The AP article covers the whole topic of wearing the gloves in Georgia at the runoff election. Alleged ballot harvesters were captured on surveillance video wearing gloves because they didn't want to leave their fingerprints on the ballots. And here's your example. But to truly prove this point, there would have to be an external link to a file section that shows these individuals on camera delivering ballots in December for the runoff election in Georgia, mostly wearing gloves, in contrast to before, which would suggest that it isn't the worry about safety from infection that's driving the practice, but some other reason. So that contrast to before November to December in Georgia, no gloves versus gloves, would have to be demonstrated externally because there's not enough time in a documentary to show all those examples, but it would help also to have examples within the documentary showing that. And also Ms. Swinson writes that those two women indicted in Arizona did not have any mention of fingerprints being an issue there. The indictment occurred on December 23rd, so that specific motivation provided in the documentary about fear about fingerprints is not founded. In my view, you do not need evidence of fingerprints in a previous case to lead to motivation to take additional precautions. Just knowing that something occurred which blew out the cover of the operation at all would be enough to lead to a command from the overseeing organization for the workers to suddenly start wearing gloves. It's mentioned that in Philadelphia, where allegedly there were the most mules, that there was no video evidence recorded whatsoever, only cell phone data, per Greg Phillips, researcher, said in a March testimony to Pennsylvania state senators. And so this particular weakness was not mentioned in a documentary, to my knowledge. So concluding this video, if you're asking me the question, do I think that activity by the ballot collectors was partially responsible for the results that we had seen with that election? I would say absolutely, without a doubt. If you were to ask me, is much good going to come from this documentary in terms of convincing key decision makers within government and watchdog institutions, I would say I don't think so. For one thing, you have to realize that our federal law enforcement at this point in time appears to be politically captured. It is the weakness of having heavy bureaucracy concentrated in an urban area, such as Washington, D.C. Political allegiances will begin to shift on average over time. Sheriffs, who are provided quite a bit of independence in executing the law, can tip off local law enforcement in the weeks prior to the 2022 election to increase efforts at late-night ballot box surveillance. We, the people, the civilians, can organize teams of watchers to record the activity at the ballot boxes overnight for this crucial period of time. However, it's a lot of work and it's uncompensated work without the use of nonprofit foundations or donors with deep pockets. So another way of stating my conclusion, I would just say that this documentary probably needed to be another hour and a half long. It needed to reveal some detail of the sources and methods of data collection. It needed to draw inferences as well as direct links to cell phone activity correlated with video evidence. If this is the best we have, I'm sorry to say it is insufficient and our republic is in near dissolution, primarily due to naivete to the extent and drive of the unscrupulous, seeking to control the narrative, laziness, and fear of direct harm for whistleblowing. Those are the factors that will shift the United States, the last large beacon of freedom for the world, in lockstep for the agenda to allow the narcissists and sociopaths to make the entire world an analogy for the late stage of the Roman Empire, where decadence breeds famine and pointless death, where humans confused of their gender don't breed at all the while gaslighting us in order to quell any protest to the actions of the unscrupulous in the betterment of their own personal interests to the detriment of the world itself. We are a world in irregular war at this moment, and there are ghosts who recognize what I just told you, who are not naive, but we are foolish if we rely on any one man or group of men, women. This is the insanity that faces us that stretches credulity. If Jankovic has been allowed to happen to us, it is because the individual is not doing enough. That's all. Till next time.